The royal train arrived on Sunday afternoon. I was on the roof of the barn, looking with my binoculars, seeing the train roll in.
That was more than 50 years ago when the Queen came to the tiny town of Carberry, Manitoba. Brian Bailey still remembers it well.
The special moment about meeting the Queen is that here is somebody that is known around the world. And here she is meeting us on our little old farm. What a thrill.
Queen Elizabeth came to Canada 22 times in her 70 years on the throne. She met thousands of people.
And it was like a dream come true.
Coming face to face with perhaps the most revered person in the world, what kind of life-changing moment is that? Brian Bailey can picture exactly where he was when his dad told him the Queen was coming to their farm.
We were at the feedlot, and he said, I got something to tell you. He stopped. He said, what would you think if the Queen was coming? I said, well, I think it'd be nice, but is that true? It was.
And then on the actual morning Queen Elizabeth was set to arrive, what Brian remembers most was how his mom averted disaster.
So she made this cake on the morning of the visit and forgot to put that cinnamon topping on. So it's just a bland white cake. Sure enough, in my mother's style, she made another one, and it was still warm when we served it to the Queen.
Finally, once the cake was perfect, the Bailey family stepped outside and history was made.
The Queen is being introduced to my mom and then to me. And she says, oh yes, and you're the school teacher. And I thought, oh my goodness, she's done her homework, hasn't she? And she had. So yeah, that was a special moment. Dad was doing the introduction. She had just come off the horses, eh?
What's that?
Well, this is the serviette used by the Queen when she had coffee and coffee cake.
A little bit of a stain.
Yes. And then here they are, chatting, two mums chatting about the world, about their children. Isn't that what mums do? Over a cup of coffee.
And the Queen seemed as keen to remember the visit as the Bailey family was.
The Queen had a camera, and she was taking pictures of us, just as I was taking pictures of them. And it was quite something. She was shooting pictures of our house, and the yard, and us, and just like a tourist. She was like a tourist. I already had a lot of respect for that royal family, but I had even more respect for them when I knew that they could be so normal and natural. And here they were, just like us. Just like us.
Meeting the Queen had a deep effect in Brian Bailey's life, and that's true for people all across the country. But now that her reign is over, it would seem she can't really do that anymore. But then again, what if she could?
What I wanted to portray in this painting is not just the image of the monarch of the times, but the whole history of Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth as a person.
Phil Richards is the last Canadian to do an official portrait of Queen Elizabeth. And for him, getting that chance was almost destiny.
I remember being very young, maybe 3 years old. I used to paint silhouette portraits of Queen Elizabeth. She helped initiate my life as an artist and ultimately as a portrait painter.
Over the 2 years Phil worked on the Queen's portrait, they got together 3 times.
When you're painting somebody's portrait, most of the time you're thinking about the person you're painting. You build up a very powerful relationship with anyone you paint.
Phil tells me he worked with the Queen on her portrait. She had input along the way.
I presented this to the Queen as a kind of watershed moment in the whole project. And she looked at it and says, oh, you made me look friendly. And I turned and I said, you're not? She just laughed. In a way, you have to kind of fall in love with everyone and everything that you paint. I think I fell in love with her devotion to her vocation. And I felt that she embodied the same kind of idealism that I had tried to embody in my life.
And so Phil put all the devotion he's poured into his craft over the years into a painting he hopes others might fall for too.
I want people in the future to be able to look at the painting and get to know something of her and her personality. Yeah, just to get to know a historical figure in a way that they wouldn't otherwise get to.
Brian Bailey knows how important meeting the Queen can be in someone's life. So much so that when the Queen returned to Manitoba in 2010, 40 years after they first had cake together on the farm, Brian knew his family had to meet her again.
My dad was sitting on the lawn at Government House in Winnipeg, and the Premier of the province introduced him as being the fellow who hosted the Queen 40 years ago, and she made an immediate dash towards him, and she said, "What a lovely time we had on your farm."
What did that mean to your dad?
He thought it was wonderful, yeah. Well, at one point my dad said, "You know, I'm not sure there's much else I need to do in this life." And so, yeah, he was, and you know, that was in July, and in January the following year he passed on. But he passed on a happy camper.
Nick Purdon, CBC News, Neepawa, Manitoba.